Hello everybody, this is Nojo from Thranda Design. It is a hot day here in Seattle, so let's go splash around in the water with the Caravan Amphibian. We're going to look at engine start, taxi, takeoff, landing, and then also docking and shutting down as well. So today we'll be in the Caravan 675. Oh, let's go cool off. Now one of the first things we might notice is that our propeller did not feather after shutdown. It's in a flat pitch instead of feathered. And that's because we have a pitch latch system, or a propeller start lock system, enabled on this airplane. And so that keeps the blades in a flat zero thrust condition so that when you shut down you don't get a big burst of thrust. So we will have to turn that off once we start the engine, so you'll see that. And the other thing to mention is right now we're in docking hold mode. So that is, here in the MISC page, docking hold on. And when that's turned on, in our slew page, we can adjust the heading of the airplane, and we can move it around, squish it around. This is just like somebody was holding the ropes and kind of walking us along. It allows us to precisely position ourselves on the dock and to stay at the dock. So today, the wind is coming out of the north, which is from that direction. So the wind is going to blow us to the right, away from the dock. That's ideal. When possible, it's best to dock on the downwind side so that the wind pushes you away from the dock rather than into it. So now this docking hold mode will hold us here against the wind, but there are three different ways to turn it off. One is we can turn it off by here in the slew page, click that button and it's off, and we see we're starting to drift away from the dock. The other way is in the MISC page, this button here, docking hold on, we can turn that off or back on. Or the third way is pressing and releasing the wheel brakes as well. That will toggle the docking hold mode off. So that's what we're going to use because it's the easiest for me. Just a couple things to mention. We have water rudders, extended or retracted. These allow us to steer on the water. It's a rudder in the water. They're extended for taxi only, otherwise they're retracted for all other phases of flight. Additionally, the floats, right now we have amphibious floats which have retractable landing gear on them, but we can also set them to plane floats, which are just floats with no wheels. And finally, these extra fins on the back. We'll have those enabled. They actually do have an aerodynamic effect. They help counter the additional area of the floats that's up here in front of the center of gravity, which makes the plane unstable. These help make it stable again. So let's go through our engine start. It's going to be this... Hi, kitty. It's going to be the same procedure as normal. So we'll come both fuel tanks on, closed, mixed or condition levers shut off, props full forward, throttle is in the idle position. I don't know if you can hear my cat meowing. Inertial separator open, all switches off, and, oh, I didn't mention bleed air heat off, and all switches off. So we're going to go battery on, beacon on. We're going to turn on the fuel pump to its norm position. We'll see it cycling. Now on. It stays on steady. No fuel flow. Prop is clear. Let's start. Oh, I should turn the sound on, shouldn't I? Sound. There we go. All right. Start. On. Rising. Prop's turning. Okay. NG is stabilized above 12%. No fuel flow. Introduce fuel. We have light off, NG is rising, there's fuel flow. Looks like our temperature peaked about 680, NG continues to rise. NG stabilized, temperature stabilizing, props coming up, and that's a good start. Starter energized is off, so we're going to go starter switch off. Now the generator's on, aux fuel pump to norm, and we'll turn on our avionics. Flaps are already set to 20, which is what we want. Now, I mentioned the propeller start locks. So right now the prop is in a flat pitch. It won't give us any thrust. We can't really do anything with it. So in order to get it out of that, we simply go into reverse and back to idle. And now our propeller should be generating thrust for us. So I'm going to hold right on the rudder and release that docking mode. I'm going to go into beta here. And there we are, pulling away from the dock. Hope these people watch their heads. All right, so for taxi, generally it's done just at idle. We want to taxi slow because we don't want to dig the front of those floats into the water. And then I'm just using my normal rudder with the water rudders extended to steer the plane. So I'm in beta, keeps us nice and slow, low thrust condition. And we're going to taxi out so that we can face into the wind, which is going to be, wind's about 010, so it's going to be roughly that direction. And then we're going to get ready for takeoff. So I'm going to skip ahead to that real quick, and we'll continue from there. All right, so getting ready for takeoff, we're going to verify both fuel selectors are on, props full forward, mixture is going to come up to high idle, but we're going to retract the water rudder. So that's this handle here. We can click right there on the pivot, or we can click on the handle itself. But back is retracted, and we can verify that by seeing here in the window. Forward is extended, back is retracted. Now this pump is for the emergency gear extension. We'll check that out. And then this selector is the same as this selector here. Right now the gear handle is up, and so we have 4 blue indicating all 4 gear are up. We have a dimmer switch, and the green would be down. So, alright, what are we doing? Strobe comes on, taxi recognition light comes on. Now with the water rudder retracted, the directional control is a little softer, so now I'm just kind of pressing and holding the rudder as needed to keep the plane pointed into the wind. So, alright, all things set for takeoff. I'm going to come out of beta, I'm going to go into high idle. Now for the takeoff, we're going to pick our spot on the horizon that we're aiming at. So we're aiming right about there. We're going to go full aft on the yoke. Let's see that yoke. Full aft, and we're smoothly going to add takeoff power. Now we're just holding full aft to keep those float tips up, and you can see how the nose rises. Takeoff power is set. Now we can relax some of that back pressure, and I'm holding maybe just a tiny bit, and we're going to find that sweet spot that allows us to accelerate. There's 40 knots, maybe a little bit more nose up. There we go, 45, 50, 55, and we're just going to let the plane fly itself off the runway while holding that pitch attitude. Sorry, I said runway. The lake. Let the plane fly off the lake. There we go. We are airborne. Now at this point, for this takeoff, since we have a bridge to clear, we're going to fly at 78 knots until we're clear of obstacles. Otherwise, you'd keep the nose down and just accelerate through your normal flap retraction speeds, which would be flaps to 10 at 85 and flaps retract at 95 knots. So we're in a right turn. We're just going to follow the canal out here. We're crossing over the I-5 bridge. Check out the outside view. There's the I-5 bridge. And the University of Washington off our nose. Alright, at this point, I'm going to let that nose come down. We're going to start accelerating through 85, flaps to 10. Bring that nose up to prevent us from sinking. And then once we reach 95, flaps retracted. So that's our takeoff. Next, we'll go take a look at landing. We'll go land up at the main Kenmore base up at the north end of the lake up there. Now, while we're en route for cruise, you can expect about 10% less performance with those floats. We got a lot of area hanging out there, and the plane's a bit heavier. So we're just accelerating up kind of to cruise speed now. We're staying low. We're at 1,250 feet, coming up around Sandpoint. And I've set the power at 1,500 foot-pounds of torque. Just left the prop full forward. Gives us kind of a nice cruise power setting. And you can see our airspeed indicated coming up about 145. We'll expect maybe 145 to 150 true airspeed. So a bit slower, about 10 or 15 knots slower depending. But yeah, the Caravan still cruises pretty well as an amphibian. Since we're here, let's take a look at the landing gear system real quick. So this gear panel is visible on the instrument panel only when we have the amphibian floats loaded. It disappears when we're using the straight floats or when we're on the wheeled version of the Caravan. So to extend the gear, we can press the G key or click here on the gear handle, which we'll do. We can see the blue lights go out, the red pump light turns on indicating they're in transit, and then the 4 green lights come on as each gear locks into place. And we can see from the outside view, there they are. So this is useful for if we're landing on the runway, we would have the call out, gear down, no red, 4 green for runway landing. Or if we're landing on water, we would have the call out, gear up, no red, 4 blue for water landing. Because you don't want to land on the water with the gear down, the plane it'll flip over. So now, what would happen if, let's say we extend the gear handle, and nothing happens. We still have the 4, they still show retracted, 4 blue. So the gear system is an electric pump that electric motor that runs a hydraulic pump that moves the gear actuators. So in this case, maybe our electric motor burned out. So if that's the case, we have this emergency system down here. Now, this gear handle and this selector knob are hooked up to the same. So gear down in this case, so we want it down. So we can pump it down. Now, let's see if I can arrange the camera so we can see the gear panel and the pump. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, should be about 15 pumps. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There we go. So this is our emergency gear extension system. We can pump that to pump the gear down. And the cool thing is, because this is an amphibian, we can also, let's set that up, we can also pump it up. And so this will, in an emergency, allow us to land on water as well. So if your gear actuators fail, then this system, this emergency pump, will allow us to still move the gear. So here we are, we're kind of on a downwind. We're basically flying a traffic pattern around where we're going to land. And the Kenmore Seaplane base is right there. So we'll see that up close once we get closer. So we're going to allow flaps to 10, and what we're shooting for here is about 85 knots on final, and touching down probably around 75 knots or so with full flaps. So, just going through our before landing flow check real quick. Those are on, that's full, that comes on. Lights, and igniters. Alright. Let's see, we're 100 knots. Let's go full flaps. And we're just gonna kind of chop and drop here. Turning around. Kind of look out over our wing. So, we're on sort of an awkward base. Oh, and we need to verify. Gear up, no red, 4 blue for water landing. And that's kind of the mantra you can say. Make sure we do not land with gear down. That would be very bad. And also verifying our water rudder is retracted. So now, here we are about 80 knots. We want to touch down about 75. I'm going to add some power. So what we're going to do is we're going to carry about 500, maybe 600 foot-pounds in, and we're probably going to just maintain that power setting all the way to touchdown. We want a very shallow descent. There's 70. I'm probably getting a little slow, actually. There it is. There's the touchdown. So now, power comes to idle, and we can go into beta, and reverse if we needed to, but we really don't. I'm just holding that yoke full back to keep the tips of the floats out of the water. And now that we've slowed down, leaving it in beta, I can relax that back pressure, extend the water rudders, and now we can steer. So at this point, we'd have quite a ways to taxi. The seaplane base is way up there. So let's do a step taxi. So instead of taxiing along at like 7 knots, we can pretend we're taking off. So we're going to go flaps 20, retract the water rudders, coming out of beta, full back on the yoke, and we're going to increase power, and we're going to accelerate just like with takeoff. Now that we're up, relax that back pressure, let the nose come down, we're up on the step, and our airspeed indicator is starting to come alive. I'm just going to reduce the power, maybe 1,400 foot-pounds. There we go. So now we are just planing. We're not going to accelerate, we're not going to be able to take off, but we're going much, much faster than we otherwise would be able to. And we can maintain this step taxi all the way until we get close enough. As soon as we want to slow down, we just hold full back on the yoke again. So let's go a little further. Let's live dangerously. There we go. Power to idle, full back on the yoke. We can use beta if we need to, but we probably don't. That's going to just slow us right down. And here we are coming into the dock area. Can relax that back pressure. Water rudder extended. There we go. Whoops. I was holding a bunch of rudder. Okay. So, low idle. Flaps retract. Let's go up. That's good. Lights as required. Those come off. That comes off. Okay, so we're ready for shutdown. So now the tricky part. Again, I mentioned we want to dock onto the downwind side of the docks if possible, but that might not be possible in this case. We're basically coming straight into the wind. So we're going to go dock on this big long one over here. We're going We go into beta, because we want to be going nice and slow. So the cool thing is we have beta in reverse. We can use that. We're going to get ready for landing, or for docking. So battery comes off, generator trip. I'm going to open the door. Oh, it got loud. And now, getting close, we're going to go kill the engine, and we're going to go into reverse. And that's going to allow those pitch locks to prevent the propeller from feathering. And now that we're here, we can just come to our docking hold mode and engage it. And that's as if somebody grabbed the rope and pulled us in. So there we go, we have docked. Now that we've docked, that prop's going to take a while to spin down because we didn't feather it. And so we can just go through our after landing, or after shutdown checklist. So fuel off, flaps up, condition levers off, props full forward, that stays open, close that. Lights as required, we'll just leave our beacon on. Batteries off, oh, avionics. Batteries off, generators off. All right. So how about that? Now, one note, really important to turn off these fuel selectors. If you don't, you'll get some cross-feeding from one fuel tank to the other. And you can imagine what happens. Here, actually, let's see this. Weight and balance. Let's say this tank is more full, the right tank. And you notice the plane is notably leaning to the right. Well, the more it leans to the right, the more fuel is going to flow from the left to the right. Now, when I worked at Kenmore, I actually worked here, and there was a Caravan. It was actually docked right here. But the pilot had accidentally left the fuel selectors on, so over the course of a few hours, one tank became much, much heavier than the other, and so we ended up having to sit on the other wing to tilt it back the other way to try to rebalance the fuel. So that was pretty fun. So don't do that. Make sure your fuel selectors are off. All right. So that was our seaplane tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, I will see you on the next video. Have fun.